Let me tell you something that should be keeping every Russian air defense commander awake at night. Ukraine just demonstrated, not in a lab, not in a briefing room, but in live combat operations over the Moscow region, that it can reach nearly 800 kilometers into Russian territory with a domestically produced jet-powered strike drone. Not once, not a handful of platforms, swarms of them, simultaneously, against one of the most heavily defended airspaces on the planet. That is not a tactical development. That is a strategic signal. And if you understand how air defense architecture works, how layered radar coverage, intercept corridors, and engagement envelopes are designed, you understand why this specific capability represents something far more consequential than a headline about drones over Moscow. This is Ukraine serving notice that the geographic sanctuary Russia has operated from since the early days of this war is no longer guaranteed. Let's break down exactly what happened, what it means, and where this is heading. The Bars drone, what Moscow didn't want you to examine closely. The platform responsible for these deep strike operations is the Ukrainian Bars, a jet-powered drone developed entirely by a private Ukrainian defense company, deliberately kept off public record for months under a loose bureaucratic classification designed to accelerate frontline deployment. That kind of information security discipline in a wartime environment with significant intelligence penetration risks tells you something about how seriously Kyiv treated this program. Look at the engineering. The Bars features a conventional fixed-wing aviation layout, clean, efficient, aerodynamically straightforward. The jet engine is mounted directly above the tail fuselage. That placement is not accidental. It allows propulsion systems to be swapped without requiring a complete airframe redesign. In a high-attrition war, where production speed determines battlefield relevance, that modularity is a force multiplier in itself. The fuselage is composite construction, built from a deliberately minimized number of components. Again, this is a production philosophy, not just an engineering choice. Every reduction in part count accelerates manufacturing throughput. Ukraine is not building museum pieces. It is building weapons at scale. The extended variant, the Bars SM, now officially confirmed by Ukrainian General Staff as participating in the Moscow strikes, carries an expanded warhead and operates at the outer edge of that 700 to 800 kilometer range band. That range envelope puts a significant portion of western and central Russia within reach from Ukrainian-controlled launch positions. What Ukraine has now demonstrated is the ability to organize these platforms into coordinated swarm operations. Intelligence assessments indicate single-night launch packages approaching 100 airframes, targeting Russian infrastructure simultaneously. The strategic logic is straightforward. You are not trying to guarantee that every drone reaches its target. You are trying to exhaust, saturate, and degrade the intercept capacity of Russian air defense networks. Force them to expend expensive interceptors against inexpensive drones. Accumulate attrition on their air defense inventory over time. And on the nights when the network is overwhelmed, the ones that get through do real damage. This is not improvised. This is a deliberate, systematically executed deep strike campaign. The answer to 3 years of punishment. Now let's talk about something that, in my assessment, may carry even greater long-term battlefield significance than the drone strikes. For over 3 years, Russian aviation has exploited a brutal asymmetry. Soviet-era unguided bombs, massive, cheap, and available in enormous stockpiles, were retrofitted with basic guidance and glide kits, then dropped from aircraft operating well inside Russian airspace. Ukrainian air defenses had no reliable answer. The physics of a gliding bomb make it exceptionally difficult to intercept. It carries no active propulsion signature during terminal flight. It does not emit the radar return of a powered missile. And critically, because it is not actively guided by radio frequency link during its glide phase, electronic warfare countermeasures that would jam a command-guided weapon have no effect on it. Russia used this capability to systematically level Ukrainian defensive positions, fortified trenches, hardened command nodes, logistics infrastructure, in a way that fundamentally shaped the tactical balance along contested sectors of the front. Ukraine has now produced its own answer. Developed over 17 months under the state-backed Brave One Defense Innovation Cluster, Ukraine's domestically engineered guided aerial bomb converts existing FAB-250 Soviet unguided munitions, weapons already in Ukrainian inventory, into precision glide weapons using an indigenous folding wing kit and aerodynamic control package. The 250-kilogram warhead is specifically engineered for hardened targets, reinforced concrete fortifications, underground command facilities, bunker complexes. The cost structure matters enormously here. Western equivalents, the American JDAMER, the French Hammer system, are effective but carry procurement and donor dependency costs that constrain how aggressively Ukraine can employ them. An indigenous weapon, built from existing stockpile components, manufactured domestically, subject to no foreign transfer restrictions and no donor nation political conditions, that is a fundamentally different strategic asset. The release profile means Ukrainian combat aircraft can deliver these weapons from deep within their own airspace, keeping pilots and airframes entirely clear of Russia's most capable integrated air defense coverage. The Ministry of Defense has already procured the first operational batch. Pilots are in training now. When this system reaches full operational deployment, Russia will experience on its own defensive lines the same kind of precision punishment it has been delivering to Ukraine for 3 years. The asymmetry that shaped this war's middle phase is closing. What's happening on the ground and why the numbers from Zaporizhzhia matter. The weapons picture tells one story. The ground maneuver picture tells another. And together they explain why the trajectory of this war is shifting in ways that most outside observers are not fully processing. Let me take you to the Zaporizhzhia axis, specifically the Stepanivka sector south of the regional capital. Ukrainian military intelligence and special operations elements executed a coordinated multi-axis counterattack operation that recaptured key terrain and forced Russian elements into retreat. This was not a hasty assault. The operation demonstrated deliberate planning, combined arms integration, and tactical discipline that speaks to the maturation of Ukrainian command capacity under sustained combat pressure. The assault force utilized mine-resistant vehicles to navigate terrain heavily seeded with Russian anti-tank and anti-personnel obstacles, an environment that would have stopped a less disciplined force before it reached the objective. The initial penetration broke through outer Russian defensive lines using suppressive fire from heavy machine gun and automatic grenade launcher systems. Once Ukrainian elements established presence in the northern sectors of Stepanivka, the assault transitioned into systematic building-to-building clearing operations. What distinguished this from a conventional mechanized push was the overhead integration. Ukrainian FPV drone operators maintained persistent coverage of the objective area throughout the ground phase, hunting Russian elements attempting to reposition, denying freedom of movement within the settlement, and creating the kind of continuous engagement pressure that collapses defensive cohesion faster than direct fire alone. The result? Russian defensive consolidation broke. Remaining elements withdrew south. Now consider the geographic consequences. Stepanivka sits on an axis that directly threatens the Russian riverbank advance toward Zaporizhzhia city itself. The area is bounded on multiple sides by water features, a geographic reality that creates choke points favorable to a defending force attempting to sever Russian logistics and reinforcement corridors. Ukrainian commanders understand this terrain. By establishing a firm foothold in Stepanivka's northern sector, they disrupted the operational geometry of the Russian advance on the regional capital. The Institute for the Study of War has tracked and confirmed visual evidence of Ukrainian forces operating and clearing settlements northwest and north of Huliaipol throughout this same period, corroborating a broader pattern of Ukrainian initiative across multiple subsectors of the Southern Front. The manpower signal from July direction and why it's critical. Now I want to walk you through an intelligence indicator that, in my experience, consistently precedes larger operational deterioration, and Russian commanders in the July direction are currently exhibiting it. Russian assault infantry availability in this sector has degraded to a point where field commanders are reportedly conscripting specialized technical personnel, specifically trained drone operators, into direct frontline infantry roles to fill assault team shortfalls. Let me be precise about why this is significant. Drone operators in the modern Russian military represent a trained, technically skilled cadre that takes time and resources to develop. These are not interchangeable with general infantry. When a chain of command starts feeding technical specialists into dismounted assault operations, it is signaling one of two realities, or both simultaneously. Either the infantry replacement pipeline has broken down to the point that no adequate substitutes are available, or command pressure from higher echelons is demanding offensive action on the timeline that outstrips available combat-ready infantry capacity. Either condition represents severe degradation of sustainable combat power. This is not a tactical footnote. A military organization that begins cannibalizing its technical specialist cadre to sustain offensive operations is consuming its own future capability to fight effectively. The drone overmatch that Russian forces have relied upon in several sectors is partially a product of the investment in precisely this trained personnel pool. Feeding them into infantry assaults degrades that advantage, and once those personnel are lost, reconstituting that capacity under wartime pressure is exceptionally difficult. What the intelligence picture from early May 2026 in this sector is showing is an operational force under severe strain, not collapsing, but consuming reserves faster than they are being replenished, making tactical decisions that trade long-term capability for short-term pressure. The strategic picture emerging from all of this. Stand back from the individual data points, the Bars drone, the guided bomb, the Stepanivka operation, the manpower signals from July direction, and a coherent strategic picture emerges. Ukraine has moved from a force primarily absorbing Russian pressure and managing defensive depth to a force that is simultaneously conducting deep strategic strikes against Russian infrastructure and territory, executing deliberate offensive ground operations to recapture key terrain, fielding domestically produced precision munitions that reduce foreign donor dependency, and accumulating attrition against Russian manpower and technical cadre faster than Russian reconstitution capacity can compensate. The pace and coordination of this activity is not accidental. It reflects a Ukrainian operational approach that has been absorbing lessons from 3 years of high-intensity warfare and translating them into increasingly sophisticated combined arms execution. Russia still holds significant advantages: depth of territory, population size, defense industrial capacity at scale, and the geographic and political will to sustain losses that would be politically unsustainable in a Western democracy. None of that has changed. But the specific asymmetries that define the early and middle phases of this war, Russian geographic sanctuary, Russian air superiority in glide bomb employment, Russian dominance in long-range strike, are being methodically challenged by Ukrainian capability development that Western intelligence services did not fully anticipate at the war's outset. The Bars drone over Moscow is not just a message to Russian air defense commanders. It is a message to every capital watching this war about what a determined, resourceful, domestically innovative military can achieve when it is fighting for its survival, and when it refuses to accept the limitations others assumed would define it. The tectonic plates of this battlefield are shifting, and the reverberations of that shift are being felt far beyond the front lines of eastern Ukraine.